I was doing sales a lot. You always question yourself. Did I fuck up? Did I do something wrong?
Have you nailed hiring, firing process?
I don't know, man. It's always a shit show.
In these tough times, 3 executives are leaving.
It's like a punch. If you're in bootstrap mode, you have to be opportunistic. You have to hustle harder.
Hey, awesome people! Welcome to Bootstrap Stories, the only podcast where founders of bootstrap companies share in all transparency the ups and downs of their journey. Starting a business comes hand in hand with loneliness, the pressure of not being successful, and overall, lots of challenges. After meeting with hundreds of entrepreneurs in the past years, I figured out that we all have struggles and make lots of mistakes when building a business. But the truth is that most people are afraid to share this publicly. That's what motivated me to start this podcast, to show that we're all on the same journey, facing the same struggles, and to give energy to all entrepreneurs worldwide to continue their adventure. Even if sometimes it can be really challenging and we often feel like giving up, in the end, it's all worth it. My guest for this episode is Vivek Bhaskaran, founder and CEO at QuestionPro. Hey Vivek, welcome to Bootstrap Stories podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And before jumping into the discussion, I want to give you a short idea about what we're going to discuss next. In the first part of the episode, I really want to focus on the strategies that help you grow a multi-million-dollar bootstrap business. Next, we'll have like real founders chat. So go deep into the challenges and hard times because I'm sure it was not only milk and honey for 15 years. And in the last part of the episode, I also want to find out your learnings and a couple of takeaways for everyone who's listening to us, because we have a lot of bootstrap entrepreneurs listening, and I think it's a good time to start sharing. Can you let us know a bit more about your business, when you started, what pain is it solving, and who is it addressing?
Yeah, sure. So the name of the company is, and the product is QuestionPro. We help companies measure experiences for their customers, for their employees, and do research really through the notion of surveys. So that's our core product. So anybody can come in, create a survey, deploy it to their customers or employees, or deploy it to a panel for who are not even their customers to do market research in terms of trying to build a new product or trying to figure out how to price a new product. So that at its nutshell is our product. And typical SaaS model, we do annual licenses, and typically towards enterprises, really mid to large enterprises is our core focus.
Nice. And right now, what's your current ARR?
So we're doing about 28 million right now,
Nice.
all up between globally. So we have offices globally. We have obviously here in the States. We also have offices in Germany for the Europe market, Latin America, and then APAC and India. So we sell globally.
How many people in the team in total?
So about 250, I think, total. Like including sales and accounts and everything else, about 250 people.
Wow, that's impressive. So going from 2005 to right now, what has been for you like the key growth leverage that you've activated, and what has been working well to grow the company that far?
Yeah, I mean, the initial part, I almost look at it in two phases. Like 2005 to 2007, we grew really rapidly. Started out the business. First year we made 200, then 800, then 1.8, then 3.4. Like really rapid growth in the first 4 years, and then at 3.5 million, we got stuck really for a couple of years there. The first phase of the growth was, frankly, through organic SEO. So we figured out SEO before SEO was cool. It was back in
Nice.
2005, I guess. So, and SEO is also largely a kind of like, how many people are fighting for that same keyword is the real question. It's not about you, it's about who else is fighting for that same keyword, right? So, and I have an engineering background. So, I mean, SEO is largely a kind of a technical engineering play. Not that you don't have to be very creative. You just have to be, frankly, you have to be smart. But you make some changes, see the changes, understand what changes are required to move you up or down. Obviously the search stack. So that's kind of what helped us in the first phase. And then I took a break actually between 2010 to 2014 to 2015. I came back to run the company. I did a couple other startups. And then the second phase is largely around, sales enablement and sales. We moved more to the enterprise, and then effectively we just said, all right, we're gonna have an enterprise sales function, really. And enterprise sales, as you know, is like a lot of work, but also it's very sticky. Churn rates are low, and you can do a lot. And obviously, expansion modeling is there on top of it.
So prior to going up market, you were really focusing more on smaller businesses. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So, okay. Self-service, fully self-service, without even talking to somebody. People would come in, swipe their credit card and pay us, really. So that was the one vector. That was what we were targeting earlier on.
Okay. And when you hit that plateau in 2007 or 8,
yeah, or 2009,
2009. Yeah. So when you started hitting the plateau, like what's the reason behind it? Is it because your churn is too high and you're not acquiring enough customers? Like, is it a churn problem, or is it just an acquisition problem? Is it because more people compete in SEO? How do you analyze that?
Probably all of them. Like, so by 2009, 2010, everybody figured out how to do SEO really well, really, right? So it's like, okay, good. So they were starting to compete with us on traffic. So front-end traffic started, either plateauing or really plateaued out, right? So we could not figure that part out, really, right? So front-end traffic flattened out. Churn was still reasonably high because we had not put together customer success models and things like that, because we were still doing fully self-service. So one of the challenges is full self-service mode. I mean, with low ticket items, churn is going to be a problem, right? I mean, I don't know of any SaaS company that is, selling for less than $1,000 a year and not have a churn problem, really, right? And that's the nature of the business. At some point, you just have to agree that that's, if you're not going to invest in customer success, but if you're going to invest in customer success, then $1,000 a year is not that much money, so you can't really invest so much, really. Then you have another separate problem, really, right? So it was during that time, I think it was a combination of our traffic plateaued. Churn was still the same, frankly, right? And so revenue was not going up, really. So it's kind of like, so that, and then we didn't know, and because we were not asking for enough money, we could not put a lot of senior customer success resources on the problem, really. And at that time, I didn't even know that we could do that. Honestly, I was pretty, frankly, I was pretty clueless. I was like, oh shit, man. The only thing like, oh shit, revenue is going down. And we were like really focused on traffic, but we could never get traffic back up and running. So you could argue, one could argue that I should have started investing in AdWords and paid search, really. So since you can't get organic, so, shift to paid. But at paid, we could never make the unit economics work at that price point, right? So you're like, oh shit, man. Okay, it's $10 a click, which means it's $200 acquisition, $400 acquisition cost, payback period. I don't know, 1 year. With the churn, its payback period is 1.5, 2 years, really, right? So
we could still work out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the edge of working out, and we were just, I guess, we didn't have the balls to go out and say like, hey, look, let us spend the money and, hopefully it works out. And we were, clearly we were bootstrapped, and we were also, and frankly, more than bootstrapped, we were reasonably profitable. And so I wanted to keep those profits at that level that I wanted it to be. So that's why that was one of the, I would say that was one of the mistakes. We should have probably figured out a alternative strategy and taken some risks around, whether it's, Quora ads or some other. I'm sure there are ways where we could have hacked and found out other ways to do acquisitions outside of search.
And do you feel like at the time when, okay, you're growing really fast, so I'm guessing there is the excitement, you have the hyper growth, the team is growing, everything is going fine, and then you hit that plateau. How did the team react? How did you react? Do you feel like having a plateau for 2 years, it's something that's a killer for the team, or did you feel like it actually strengthened the relationship between people?
Yeah, we were, for the most part, I don't think the team got super affected because we always had great profit margins. So the business itself was never at risk per se, right? So all right, one way you could look at it is look, if you have great profit margins, then that's fine. Even if you don't have growth, it's not the end of the world.
You're still a profitable business, yeah.
Still make money and still go buy a nice car, do whatever the hell you want to do, really, right? So, and obviously I didn't run the business in the sense that, I wasn't typically running it to sell the company. It was more like, hey, let us make some money and have fun while doing it. That was kind of at least my attitude towards it, right? Which is good and bad, honestly. You can different. I won't argue the merits of that, that model. So the team itself was not demotivated or not. I mean, I was pretty stressed out, like just from a personal kind of professional objective perspective. I knew that the company was flatlining. I mean, it was not even flatlining. It was like, growing at, 15%, really 10%, 15%. And I was trying everything I knew, honestly. It was like, it's not that I stopped trying. We were trying different things. But except we didn't, obviously we didn't succeed. We didn't realize what the set of problems. We were trying different experiments, but we didn't realize, and we never took a step back really and say, oh, look, the real problem is really traffic, and we cannot solve the traffic problem without pouring a lot of money. So what else can we do? And it took me like 2 or 3 years to really pivot to the enterprise, really say like, okay, so we're not going to be able to solve the traffic problem. So pivot to the enterprise, and that pivot and that setup will take some time, because now you got to hire salespeople and account people and all that stuff and so on. And also the stiff competition, man. I mean, look, we compete with, Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey, and, both of them are $1 billion plus companies in the space. So there's obviously stiff competition in terms of, getting our product out there.
And I'm wondering, like, when, so you started a company, you say, okay, I'm going to do like SaaS business. It's self-service, which is quite nice because the way you structure the company is really, really scalable without having to hire way too many people. And now you decide to make that switch after like 7 years to say, okay, we're going to go up market, which means that you're going to transition towards a company that is extremely different. Like you have a sales team, you have SDRs, account manager, etc. Like what was your view on it? Because I'm assuming that if you've done that for 7 years with a self-serve business model, is that you kind of liked it and you didn't really want to have like a lot of sales and a lot of people management to do. How did you approach it, and what forced you to make that switch?
Well, first of all, it was growth that forced me. Simply put, like, I mean, look, we were flat. Like after first 4 years, like got to $3.5 million, and then the next year it's we didn't go from 3.5 to 5.5, right? We went from 3.5 to 3.6, 3.7, then 3.9, then 4.2, really, right? So like we was clearly like shit. We had hit a wall, really, right? And so I tried for 3 years to fix the wall, right? I mean, we tried all kinds of things. So at some point, we just said, look, if we keep going down this route, it's take us, I don't know, we're not going to go anywhere. Like, we're done. And after about 3 years is when I said, and during that time, I ended up, setting up another, company that went into the enterprise itself. Really, we created a new brand. It was again an experiment, right? So we had QuestionPro brand, we were selling to the SMB market. So I created another brand called Survey Analytics, and see if I could just sell the same product, sell that as an enterprise solution straight up, right? That was a good hack. I mean, basically, I cloned the code.
You rebranded it.
Just rebranded it. No, and it's not that I rebranded it. I just created a new brand, really, right? Yeah. Because I don't want to lose my $3.5-4 million
existing user base.
Existing user base. So they're all doing what they're doing. I just created a brand new brand, right? I mean, in hindsight, I should have just created QuestionPro Enterprise, really. Today, it kind of seems stupid to create a new brand. But at the time, again, everything is easy to, understand. At the time, like, okay, look, we cannot really pivot the entire company to enterprise, but what we can do, which is much easier, which is like create a new brand and see if that enterprise business works. And that business actually grew really rapidly, because we were selling, $10,000, $20,000 deals, and you could get it from, we got a few customers that were on QuestionPro. They were like, well, we'd move you to the enterprise platform. And then, that thing went from, $0 to $2 million in 3 years, really 2 years. Right. So
you got the same traction, like, as in the beginning of,
correct. Yeah. Exactly. That's when I realized the enterprise business can grow at that scale. And that's when, that's when in 2015, then we pivoted back to say like, okay, we'll create a, merge the enterprise business back in, and then said like, okay, that's the way to, we knew at that point that if you had the enterprise business, it will grow at 30-40% pretty easily.
And to be honest, I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was actually like quite smart, because I would have felt exactly the same way as you did. Like, if you have like more SMBs customers and you decide to go up market, like for people, whenever they go on your website, they don't have the same vibe. Like creating a new brand, I think kind of like made sense, especially like you must have been scared like to lose all existing customers, no?
Yeah, that was the big problem, right? I mean, if I take QuestionPro, pivoted to the enterprise, really. And in hindsight, everything makes sense. So, oh, okay, you'll make money, don't worry. But at that time, we were selling software for $30 a month, $50 a month, really, right? And you pivot fully to the enterprise, then you're like, again, everything is a risk, and I wasn't, frankly, I guess I don't have the balls to take that risk, I guess. So so then I kind of went through this, and then I knew that this was going to work 100%, right? I mean, we were a separate brand, and more importantly, as a company, we knew how to sell enterprise deals also.
Yeah.
So that takes time for any organization to kind of get comfortable doing it. And now I think we've kind of moved more towards the enterprise as a whole company right now.
And the way you rebranded it afterwards in 2015, how exactly did you manage to do that? Was it saying, okay, our company is acquiring a new enterprise version? Or
we just said we merged. No? Yeah, the two company publicly we said the two company merged. We own both the companies anyway, so so we own both brands. We merged, and then hey, look, you got new, here's QuestionPro Enterprise, and then
were you transparent? Were you transparent about the fact that you own both brands?
Semi-transparent, I would say. But customers didn't give a shit. Honestly, they're like, fine, whatever. It is what it is, really. They're not that with it. It was more like what I did not. My big learning was what I should have done is just created even internally. The problem was not external. The problem was internal, right? Is what the DNA of the company is, right? As you correctly pointed out earlier on, is hey, it's automated sales, and people love it. It's internal to say well, when you're starting to sell 50, 100K deals, then the way you service those deals, the way you sell it, everything changes, right? And so you need to have a new group of people in the company that can do that function. Simply put, the same guys who can sell $99 deals are not going to be the same guys who sell $100,000 deal, really, right? So it was really in my mind, I could not figure out that the same company can have both two kinds of people, really, right? At least, and again, in my naivety, I think I said I couldn't figure out. What I should have done is just created a new division in the company, a separate group in a company, and say look, you guys are the enterprise sales guys, you guys are the commercial sales guys. End of story. You sell for $99, you sell for $99,000. Done. And produce product from between them. And so that's what I should have done, but but that's why we end up doing that today, really, and it's working. Obviously, the machine's working really well. So from that perspective, I should have done that at the time.
And when you want to make that switch, because it's quite of a big leap moving from from SMBs towards enterprise, do you say okay, I'm gonna be the one doing sales and trying to go after this big enterprise, or do you say okay, I'm gonna hire the best person to run this test for me, someone that I can trust? How exactly did you approach that kind of pivot?
Both, really. So I was doing sales a lot. I got ahead of the problem, and I wanted to understand the sales process and go through that process. So I was doing sales a lot, and I also kind of hired a couple of guys who've been at enterprise sales, who've done enterprise sales before, to kind of put process and systems in play, really, right? So those were the two kind of things that helped. And the final thing that helped me, at least for our business, we went into this global expansion mode. Right, we just said look, we're obviously based here in the States, but in the States, look, I was competing with guys who had 20 times the amount of money. Their SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics marketing budget is 30 times what I have. So, and they were pouring all this money into the market and gaining market share, really. So, what we did was, we went into other markets like Latin America and Germany and UK and Dubai, Middle East and India and Australia. So these other markets, that's the great thing about SaaS, right? If you kind of solve, and here's the thing I don't think a lot of people do. If you solve the language problem, which it's like in software, I'm a software developer, so I know. So you can solve one language, you can do 10 languages. Simple, right? Yeah. If you can do English and Spanish, you can do English, Spanish, and German and French pretty easily, really, right? But it's a little bit of work to go from a pure play, a single language to multiple, second language. But once you do 2, you can do 5. Honestly, it's not that complicated because you have a system in play to handle all the translations, all that stuff is there. And so we kind of made that bet, and that has helped us grow really. So we have, like I said earlier on, we have offices in these markets because once you go enterprise, you got to be local, really, right? I mean,
Yeah.
nobody's spending, nobody's spending, money, that kind of money, and they feel uncomfortable, simply put, right? Somebody from, okay, some company in the States, I don't know, they don't have local presence. Do I want to give $100,000 to these guys, right? Um, and so that goes hand in hand. If you think about it, if you want to sell for 100 grand and you want to sell it to, Emirates in the Middle East, well, you got to have a presence in the Middle East, and you got to have, that's the investment you got to make. So we made that investment. So that's how we grow the sales team and said, oh, look, what do you have? We have a general manager in Dubai, a general manager in Germany, a general manager in UK. And so they're selling UK, you're selling it to Unilever, Germany, you're selling it to Deutsche Telekom. and Germany is especially markets like Germany and Latin America. I mean, most of them want you to speak the same language. I mean, you can't even service them from somewhere, nobody, I mean, none of us speak German for sure. So we can't do anything about it. And that's one vector. If you can think about scale vector, that's going to open vector available.
You felt like by being very by localizing, kind of having different teams in different countries really helped you kind of leverage that hyper growth on going and moving forwards to enterprise, right?
Yeah, I mean that's reasonably. I mean, that helped us move to the enterprise because we had local, and it also gave us kind of leverage, right? We don't have to rewrite the software. All we had to do is to translate the strings. Yeah. That's it, right? I mean, it's not that complicated, frankly, right? I mean, we just put it on Google Translate and got the whole thing done. And then I asked him, okay, then I hired somebody in Germany. It's like, go through the website and fix all the problems, right? It's, and 3 days or 7 days we were done, really, right? If there's something wrong, just fix it. Go online, just go click on the button and fix the translation, edit it. That's it, right? And so we built an internal system just to edit our entire app, really, right? And so once we did it, now we could. I really did it for we started off this process for Latin America, which is Spanish, obviously, right? So we were like, okay, we're gonna sell in Latin America, and then obviously Latin America, you have to have it in Spanish. So that price point a lot of times. And so it also helps with the sales process, right? So we had, Spanish support, Spanish sales, Spanish website, not just the website, but the application itself has to be in Spanish because everything, it's not just the website. The website is easy, but really the application is kind of you have to fix the application. And so once that happened, then people, obviously we could then compete against, people with, far more money than us and that gave us leverage, right? That we were able to sell it. And then we build the product, continuously build the product. Now the build product is, obviously you build the product once and sell it everywhere, really. And our goal is to sell it to as many people as fast as possible. So that was one of the hacks that actually worked really well in terms of us growing from we did that hack somewhere around the $6-7 million range. So that's been that has been one of the vectors that has continuously given us growth over the last 4 or 5 years, really.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think Pipedrive actually had a similar story where they grew to about 10 million, I think, in ARR, and after that, when they started to localize and create content for each language in specific countries, they started to see a really huge increase, in conversion rate in these countries, and that helped them, I think, to grow to 60 million before they get acquired by another big private equity. And you mentioned at some point that you kind of stopped running the business for a few years. Can you let us know a bit more about that?
Yeah, so in 2010, I kind of I hired somebody else, 2 other guys. We spun out another product called IdeaScale out of QuestionPro. We kind of came up with this new product. We tried to sell it to all our QuestionPro customers. We couldn't sell it. It's an innovation management platform where people post ideas, people vote on each other's ideas. We thought it was a research tool, really. And partly a lot of what QuestionPro does is really market research and consumer insights and research. So we thought that this would be another product in the research toolbox, really. Unfortunately, nobody paid for it. They were I'll pay you $50 a month. I'm like, no, it's an enterprise thing. They're like, no, we're not interested. So I could never sell it to them. And so we decided we're not going to sell it to QuestionPro customers. So we might as well spin it out as a separate product. First it was a separate product. And then it's I spin it out as a separate company. So I spun it out as a separate company. and then pivoted to kind of innovation management. And so that's when I hired a couple other guys. And then I said that I'll just do investments and things like that. Like I'll be in the board of a bunch of companies. Turns out that I hated my job. I didn't like it. After 3 years of doing that kind of shit, I love actually building things rather than just giving advice, because giving advice is fucking easy. Just telling people what to building shit is the hard part, really, right? So turns out that I didn't like it. I thought, and I was an angel investor. I invested in a bunch of different companies doing a bunch of stupid shit. And then I said, like, you know what, after 4 years, I said, like, yeah, this is a bad idea. It sounds cool. Okay. Oh, look, you're going to go around, giving advice to a bunch of other random people and investing in their companies, and it'll be cool. I personally didn't like it. That's a personal choice, really. And then I decided, like, well, I'm gonna come back. I like to build things, and now I'm, that's why. So that was the 4 years, 5 years I took off, and I hired 3 other guys to run the companies, and hired 3 CEOs. And then I came back and said, like, no, I'm going to run this company again.
What happened to the person you hired? Like, did you move them to?
No, one of them was the CEO. The other guys, like, he moved on, but he still works with me, and he just said, like, look, because it was a stressful merge, right? We are merging 2 different companies. Like, Vivek, you got to come back, and you got to be the guy who takes on the risk about doing this, because there was a lot of risk over there too. So I'm like, all right, fine, you got to do this. And so now it's more streamlined, and obviously today it's more streamlined, but back then it was a little chaotic, like everything else, frankly. Everything is chaotic, but it's life.
And did you co-founded the business, or were you like a solo founder back in 2005?
No, I co-founded it. Like, I bought out my business partner in 2009, 2010, okay, when we did the split at that point. So he and I started the company. Kevin and I started the company back in 2005. We ran the company together till 2009. And then 2009, I bought him out. He wanted to go to a different route. I wanted to go a different route. And I said, like, look, instead of arguing with each other, like, why don't I pay you some money, and you can go whatever you want to do. And I can control the company. So I bought out his stock in 2009, 10, in that range. And then after that, I've been kind of, I'm the solo stockholder since then.
And do you feel like a big difference between being solo founder and having a co-founder? Like, what's the advantages and also like the drawbacks?
Yeah, the advantage is obviously 2 people are solving the problem. Both of you are committed to the problem, right? I mean, like, no matter what, and so it was fun. It was also, like, initially it's a lot of fun. Like, you're not, at least the first 4 years, I had a lot of fun kind of running the company with him, come up with great stories and interesting things we did together, and all the hacks we did together. So the benefit obviously is that you have a shared sense of, like, shared sense of ownership, shared sense of problems. Every problem is both of our problem. It's not, it's, and general purpose, both 2 founders can solve a lot of problems together, really. Like, you take care of this, I take care of that. Like, and that's going to get taken care of. So, and then, but I guess, as with human beings, like, you naturally will differ over time, really, right? I mean, initially when and that comes, I mean, the more I thought about it, the more I talked to a lot of people, like, yeah, it's natural. It's natural to have separation, really. It's not that, like, 2 people are going to be together for the rest of their lives, right? I mean, it's just not reasonable, right? And we, fortunately for us, we had a mechanism in our operating agreement. If we had separate, how would we structure? How would we have a separation deal, really? And that's an interesting conversation to have earlier on. It's like almost like a prenup, maybe. So, like, hey, look, you and I are going to start a company together. If we have difference of opinion that is beyond a particular state, where it's like getting super annoying for you, then it's annoying for you. It's annoying for me. I mean, it's not that, it's annoying for one person, not annoying for the other person.
Can you get into the details of 2 things? Because I'm really curious. Like, first thing is, why did you have the idea to structure something like that? Like, how did you get the idea? And the second thing is, how exactly was this part structured?
So we had in our agreement what's called I don't know whether you guys know this, but it's called a shotgun clause, which says that, look, if I buy your equity and I make you an offer, you can buy my equity at that same price. Like that, and I have to sell it to you. So it's like a shotgun, right? It's called, like a shotgun clause, right? Somehow my accountant, when we started up the agreement, he had that idea. He's like, look, you guys are going to start this company, blah, 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 65, 35, da, 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 da. Okay, fine. You know what? He wrote up the agreement, and he's like, okay, at some point, if you get a divorce, how to structure this really, right? And so at that point you say like you have a shotgun clause, right? So what the shotgun clause generally does is like it I can't make a bullshit offer to you, right? Because you can turn around and take that same stock price and offer it back to me, come up with the money and do that. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but it at least allows everybody. You're still not going to get market price, frankly. Like if you could sell it for whatever 10 times ARR, you probably are not going to get 10 times ARR on an internal deal, really, simply put. That's the reality of life, right? The reality of life is it's negotiated internally as to say like, hey, look, I'm going to pay you this much. This is what I can afford. Take it and go home. And instead of us, continue, instead of, you can live a better life, I can live a better life, really. So that's what's going to happen 90% of the time. But what the shotgun clause does is to establish some level of some rules, really, right? So some rules are there. It's like, okay, look, you cannot say it's $1 a share, fuck off, right? Take it, okay, fine. You can say that, but it's not, you can turn around and say like, look, you own 2 shares, so here's $2. So I own 2 shares, really. We never got to that shotgun clause, but we knew the shotgun clause existed. So what that does is provide a framework, really, right? It's like, so that, and from a practical perspective, basically, we were very, very profitable. So what we used to do at the end of the year is we used to do distributions, really, profit distribution. Exactly. So that's what we used to do for many couple of years. And then I told my partner that, look, I won't take a distribution for this year and the next year. Right. So that money that was owed to me, you take that money. And that is the way I paid off. You pay off your stock. I'm basically buying you out. Basically, I used the money company from, you could argue they made the money, but I was going to get that distribution anyway. Right. So I was going to get, it's really my money. So which I took that money and then basically, roundabout way I financed it a little bit through the company. Right? Like, okay, I cannot offer everything to you right now, but you can I won't take the distribution this year and the next year. And then that money that I would have got, you take the distributions, really.
So it's a bit like a earn-out, essentially. Like he has cash for the first year and an earn-out the year after.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I did not take that distribution, right? So for 2 years, I kind of said, fuck it, I'm not going to get any money this year. Move on. It's fine. Buy the Ferrari later.
The only thing I would be like quite scared of is, let's say that you do that at end of year 1, so or end of year X, and you know more or less how much dividends you're going to get and how much money you're going to get. But the year after, potentially you could say, okay, like now it's going to spend so much money. So at the end, the EBIT is close to zero. And no?
No, but we knew how much we could make, and we were not going to pivot that much, really, right? Like we fixed up the price tag, and we knew we could make that price tag, really, right? And it was fair.
So it was quite fair,
it was kind of reasonably fair. It was not market price, obviously, right? It was just discounted from the market price. So it's because market price has its own set of problems, right? You got to try to sell the company, you got to go through diligence, blah 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 blah. Here you're cashing out with 10 seconds later you can get a check, really simple, right?
Yeah,
so there's a difference in price tag.
Yeah, and market price usually you're gonna have certain clause in the contract that's gonna say you have to stay in the company for about 2 years, because obviously when a founder just leaves, company gets a lower valuation, etc. So not to me it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's what we did, and I'm pretty happy. I think he's happy, I'm happy, everybody's kind of generally realizes that, I think that's my advice. Like when you have, you will have disagreements, right? And then at some point you have to realize is this disagreement, there are healthy disagreements, and then there are disagreements where well, look, we are continuously having this problem and we are not able to reconcile and we are not able to figure this out, right? So at that point you just have to have an honest conversation, say okay, what do we do? And I think a lot of founders do not, I think at least I've talked to a few of them, do not approach the topic at all. They are like, oh, well, because they presuppose that the other person will not take a deal, right? And my advice would be just make an offer, dude, put it on the table, right? Hey, look, here's one option, I pay you, or I take a loan and pay you. I told him look, I'm not going to take a loan. My agreement, it's too much work, right? Going through a process, taking a loan to pay you off, I'm not going to do that. But what I can do is I won't take, in my case, I said, I'm not going to take a distribution for 2 years. I can live with that. I can live with that level of risk. What I cannot live with is going out, taking a loan, pay you off, do all that stuff. That's too much risk for me because something happens. Distribution, look, if the company doesn't do well, like you said earlier on, the next year, I mean, yeah, I mean, the company didn't do well. I mean, it is what it is. And, I'm not on the hook really, right? Uh,
It
and
makes sense.
we've never like made less money than the previous year than ever really. So we've never gone. I mean, we've kind of growth has gone down from 100% down to 20-30%, but has never gone down to negative really. So we knew that the odds of it being negative is very, very low. So therefore, you could do some modeling and projections on that.
And how did you feel like? Because I'm guessing, as you mentioned, it's you took the image of a marriage, like a prenup. So right now it's kind of the divorce, like you're buying your partner out. So after that, how did you feel? Like was it like freedom? You're super happy, and then after a few months, you might kind of like regret it and say, it was good times. Like Hami is a good old times. Like how did it go?
Actually, you nailed it. I mean, I think initially it was like, oh, good, I've been wanting to do this, but then I also realized like there was a lot of things he was doing that clearly we grew the company together. So I don't want to take it away from, we did it together. It's not just me. We did it together, really, right? And we took it from 0 to 3.5 million bucks together. So I mean, it's not a joke. So it's fun. So there were a lot of things and a lot of advice that he used to give me that that was very beneficial, really, right? He was kind of like, and I and he's a trusted party, and I and there were a lot of things, and I was missing that clearly, like the trusted advice that you get from people around you who do not have an agenda, who are very objective in their conversation, right? Only goal is to make sure the company does better, right? That got low end because everybody later on when we hired people, frankly, everybody's got some set of an agenda. Some people are better at this than others, really, right? In terms of giving you advice, very objective advice to you, right? What's happening, what they think you should do, not based on what they can get or what the company benefits, what's the long-term benefit of the company. So that kind of advice, co-founder will give 100% of the time because they are in the boat. They're there 100% of the time. They will never do anything like that benefits them that does not benefit you, really, right? So that element was missing. At least I felt that was missing quite a bit, which makes it kind of like different, not maybe difficult, maybe, but different for sure. So I adapted to that a little. It took me some time to get used to that, really. But then since then, been going along.
What have you done to kind of like fill that missing part? Because as you mentioned, when you're two people, obviously you co-founded the business together. He was handling things that you were not. And whenever you were brainstorming or even having like disagreements, it's always helpful because in the end, you all want the same thing, like going in the same direction. At some point, it was not the case. You split, but you still have that missing piece, in the equation. So how do you go to kind of like replacing a co-founder? Was it like through boards, through other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, it was a combination of everything. It was a combination of meeting other entrepreneurs, meeting mentors, and kind of listening to them. Even some of the employees that we hired, there were a bunch of, like I said, the different kinds of employees you can hire, that come online. Some of them you can feel that, I have a measure of objectivity test with people, right? Like, no matter how you and I are talking, we have to be objective about life, right? I mean, if you think something is stupid, it is stupid. There are like real truths to that, right?
Yeah.
even if it means it's detrimental to you, right? I mean, if you say like, look, we need to kind of, we need to build the sales team this way, and maybe you get a small portion of that, right? So, but the reality is for the company to grow, this is a good idea, really, right? So there are folks in the company, thank God, there are other people in the company who are, who've not obviously the founder role, but are very, very objective in their decision making and thought process, right? So I gravitated towards those guys and said, like, no, I listen to you because you don't have an agenda. Your agenda is the same, is to grow the company. So you might even give me advice that is detrimental to your own career. Let's assume that, like, not detrimental, like, losing territory, for example, right? So you talk to a sales guy, you say, like, we got to split this territory between Germany and UK. It's simple, right? So somebody's going to run UK, somebody's going to run Germany, which means the guy who runs Germany, has to lose territory. But that's right for the business. If you think about it, that's the right thing to do. That's how you grow a company, right? So people who give that kind of advice to me or have that conversation, accept those parameters, I know that they are very objective in their thinking process, right? And people who are objective in their thinking process will always give you sound advice. They're not biased in their own, and they don't have an agenda. So finding and seeking people who do not have an agenda, and they have an agenda is the growth of the company, which is kind of the other agenda, really, the larger agenda, really. Um, and having those people and surrounding myself with those people helped me quite a bit in terms of filling. You're right, filling that void that my co-founder left.
And you're talking about like existing employees, and I'm assuming that a lot of them have grown in the company. You were mentioning earlier on, like the CEO you hired that became your COO actually afterwards. In those last 16 years of growing a business, have you nailed the hiring, firing process? And what advice?
I don't know, man. Hiring is always like, it's always a shit show. One thing I will say that I have, I think, it may seem that's a long time. A lot of people talk to me like, dude, you've been doing this for 16 years. Yeah. I mean, I've done a whole bunch of other things also. It's every year I kind of every couple of years I reinvent myself. I mean, the way I run this company today is different than I ran the company even 5 years ago, which is different than, definitely different than what I did 10 years ago, really. Right. So right now we are trying to grow to $100 million in revenue, right? So that's the goal, which is a different problem than trying to go from 1 to 10. It was 5-7 years ago. That was a problem, and it was a different problem than going from 0 to 3, which is a completely separate problem, right? And so today, like, my role is different in the company. Clearly, what I do is completely different. And you're right. Today, like, a lot of my time is just simply like hiring executives. Simply put, right? I mean, I can't get on a sales call and do anything. That's it. It's nothing I can do. It can help a sales call, really, right? But what I can do is, really bring amazing talent into the company. That's it, right? So,
and what's your secret sauce for that?
Nothing but other than networking like shit, man. That's it, right? I mean, I don't use recruiters. I don't use executive recruiters either. I just say, like, look, I'm going to meet everybody, and everybody I meet, like, maybe I can hire you, maybe I can hire you, maybe I talk to everybody. So I think that's what I've done. And also I get to know people. We are, there's obviously, like every company, we have our own DNA. We have our own things that we like, things we don't like, and they have to fit into that. So there is, I mean, I would say, like, the secret sauce is really like, avid networking, like meeting as many people as I can. And then, I'm always looking for talent, right? That's the other way to look at it, is like, no matter there's a role or not, if you're smart, I would love to work with you. End of story, right? I mean, that's what I did for the UK. Like Asim, who's actually a friend of mine, I invested in his company a long time ago, and then he shut it down. Then he called me up and said, let's go for beers. And I talked to him, and it's like, hey, I was trying to recruit him as my CRO. But then he's like, no, you know what? I want to go to London, and I want to live in London for the next 5 years. I'm like, great. You can be my London, UK boss. I mean, you can do that? And he's like, yeah, I can do that. I mean, easy. So I created the role based on the person, right? I'm like, okay, it's a great opportunity for you. You're going to go to London. You want to live in London for the next 5 years. I need to expand my business. I know you really well. I know you can do the job pretty easily. So why don't you become my managing director and for the UK business, and go create that, right? So it was not that I had this master plan that I wanted to start the London office. It's more like, hey, Asim, you're going to go do it. Great. Yeah, here you go. Let's do this stuff together, right? So
you advance based on opportunities. That's
absolutely. It's like literally opportunistic. And if you're in bootstrap mode, really, right? If you think about it, if you're in bootstrap mode, you have to be opportunistic. So anybody who's bootstrapping their company and say they're not opportunistic is like, in my mind, they're missing out, really. So you have to hustle harder. You have to hustle differently because you don't have the cash to kind of throw at it.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what has worked best for us, especially in the early days. When you're not Google, you're not Microsoft, so you might not attract the same talents and have the same like inbound talent coming and knocking at your door. So I do agree that networking with as many people as possible always open up new doors that sometimes can lead to a happy partnership association or even opening a new country like you did with your friend in England. And that's cool. If we talk a bit about like the tough times for you, like what would you say in the last 16 years were kind of like the hardest times, apart from the plateau? And we discussed a bit, but were there any other things that were really tough and difficult to manage?
Yeah, like I think like a couple of years ago, I had like in a span of 3 months, three of my executives left, right?
Okay.
So we had, in my management team, like, within, October, November, December, I think, or January or something like that, like, within a span of 3 months, I had three guys leaving. For various reasons. I would say not same reason, but that was frankly, pretty depressing when your people in your executive team leave. It's like a punch, really, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I feel it, at least, and so I don't know what we could have done better or worse. Honestly, like we've done a little bit of kind of introspection around those, but I think it was just timing that three people left within a span of 3 months, really. They were independent, frankly. I don't think they were correlated to each other. So that was I'd say, a tough time, because now you're like, because obviously, as you know, recruiting executives is really, really hard, right? Especially who are running businesses and things like that. It's like super hard to do, and, build trust and execution. So like there's a huge level of trust that we have to have between us, and then they have to execute also, really, in terms of delivery of revenue and delivery of outcomes and things like that. So it's super hard to replace exact it's not, at least at the time, it gets slower. Over scale, it becomes slightly better and easier, really, right? But at the time, we were much smaller, and that was pretty. I would say I was depressed, but I was definitely like questioning my. And you always question yourself, like, did I fuck up? Did I do something wrong? Did we as a company didn't take care of these people, or did something wrong? So there was a little bit of soul searching at that time. And then eventually I talked to other folks, and they were like, yeah, I mean, we are happy. I don't know about these guys, but, from okay, fine. It's not just everybody's like, walking away. At that point, there's a systemic issue, like something I'm obviously fucking up somewhere. Uh, but that was not the case, really, right? It was like, but it was compressed
Yeah.
within a 3 month window, that I was like, oh, man, this is just one bullet after the other bullet after the third bullet, right? So it was kind of like hurting. After three bullets, it starts hurting you.
And in these tough times, like you three executives are leaving. I'm guessing like they have a notice period, or was it like from a day to another?
Yeah, we don't actually, we do not have any long employment contracts both ways. So, a
Okay.
couple of guys, gave me good notice, but one guy just gave me his 14-day notice and said, I'm leaving. I'm like, okay, it was kind of like, that's kind of tough, really, when an executive gives you 15 days notice, 14 days
Yeah.
notice. But it goes both ways. Like, we don't have kind of like, in our company, I don't do like long-term employment contracts for anybody anyway. So like, okay, it's kind of both goes, it's capitalistic model. Like, look, you can go wherever you want to go. It goes both ways, really, right? And I
Yeah.
accept that as a fair deal both ways. Transition was tough. We actually lost quite a bit of money in some, one line of business for a year. We, obviously you can't just replace a senior guy. Like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't replace him
Out
in
of
14
nowhere.
days. I don't know where to, it's not. And we don't have that kind of like, middle management bench strength that you say, oh, I can promote this guy, I can do this guy. So it was like, still really lean. So which means when you're running lean, then you are taking a bigger risk, simply put, right? So if you're like, no, that it is what it is. And so that hurt us for some time, but yeah, it's part of life, man. What are you gonna do? It's that's what makes it interesting.
And I'm guessing you replaced the three executives. Are you happy now with the people you
Yeah,
hired?
obviously. I mean, it took me time though. That was the only problem. So you lose time. You lose, time is, time is valuable. Time is energy. Time, so opportunity is lost, really. So like a couple of years, like, oh shit, man, we don't have, Then you look back and say, like, if we had these people 2 years ago, we'd be fighting in full cylinders, really, right? So
Yeah.
I think one of the lessons learned is like I should have just like doubled down and tried to at least, obviously you're doing 15 things, and now you have to kind of pivot and say like, well, fuck, I gotta fill these roles. I gotta like hustle to get that problem solved. So I should have probably, in hindsight, spent more time, getting back on the recruiting circuit to fill the role, really, because without filling the role, the revenue and the problems are, not gonna go away, not gonna get solved, really.
Is it something you're doing right now when networking with a lot of people, kind of like preparing a pipe of candidate that, if someone essential is leaving, that you have at least 2-3 people you can reach out to and who could potentially fill in the role?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's in the back of my head. And also, as you go bigger and bigger, we have people who are multidisciplined. So, like, okay, this guy leaves, this guy can do at least 50% of the job, really. So it's not like total big problem, really, right? So we have a little bit of like disaster recovery, I guess, like in terms of like backup. And we doubled down on it. And in fact, I told my entire management team, like, everybody needs to have a backup plan for themselves, because look at COVID coming. This was way back 2 years ago, like obviously 1.5 years ago when COVID was coming online. I was like, oh shit, this is like, nobody knew what the fuck is going to happen. And
Yeah.
it was crazy, scary times, really, right? And so we said, like, look, we may get who knows who's going to be who's going to be around. I'm like, okay, I need a backup plan for all of you guys, including me. Like, here's the backup plan for everybody. So we
You have to put
put
like
together
key man insurance in place for everyone in the company.
Yeah. We can put the insurance, but still somebody's got to do the work, right? I mean, like, who's going to do like insurance? You might get some money here and there, but like we still need to get the work done, really, right? So knowledge transfer and everything else. So people need to know what they're working on, so that they can all the different things that they're working on, so that we can at least transfer. And our problem was really like communication. There was a pretty big risk of like communication blackout. Like, we are global and distributed, we have team in Germany, India, everywhere, right? So like, okay, if we can't communicate with people, then it might be a big problem. Obviously, in hindsight, everything is fine. Nothing clearly happened other than obviously travel and it got disrupted. But Zoom came online, and so fine. I mean, we were all on Zoom meetings all day long, so that worked out.
I'm also curious to have your take, because after like 3.5 years, like 4 years of building SaaS business, I'm thinking about these things where whenever you have to hire executives or heads of, etc., like what I've done so far is the early employees, I've really helped them like leveling up to the status of head of, but I have mixed feelings about it sometimes. What's your take? Like, because you were saying that you couldn't replace your executive from the day to another, so my instinct would have been to tell you, like, yeah, I mean, you take your head off and you help them like to become VPs, for example. But what's your view on this? And
I think we as a company, we it depends upon how much of kind of middle management. So you have executives, then if you have a big middle management layer, then you can take the middle management and at least try to level them up, really, right? And it depends upon how much of kind of middle management capacity you have, right? In my case, a lot of times we just didn't have that kind of capacity, simply put, right? We had senior execs, and then we had kind of execution people underneath them, really, right? And so again, to keep our costs down, and we have a profit margin that we want, targets that we want to hit, and we want to obviously grow. So it's kind of both. It's not just profits against growth. It's like, no, profits and growth. That's my mantra. And so that has this risk, really. That the risk there is that you won't have kind of replacement kind of models in play, right? So that's the risk. So and you asked a question around like, hey, should we just grow people? In some cases, if the delta is too large, then you're not going to be able to do it, simply. But it really depends upon the delta, really. Delta between what kind of people you got over here and to the the VP, the head, really, right? And I think I was hiring people over here, and then a lot of the gap was pretty large, frankly. So that's the risk I took, honestly. That it's a finite, and I knew I was taking that risk. It's all right. I mean, so that's why that's the risk I take, really, and it's life, really. I mean, everything can be solved, but then you can't have the margins that you want, and then it's kind of a jigsaw puzzle, really, right? So that's a risk I was accepting, and say like, I'll accept that risk, and it'll be fine. And that risk comes with that problem, really, right? When your execs leave, then you're scrambling, frankly, right? And now my solution is exactly what you said. Is like, I have in my Rolodex, I have backup people I can pick up the phone, and maybe I still don't close them in 2 weeks, but like at least I can start the conversation and maybe close in 3 months. Otherwise, you're kind of starting the conversation, and then it takes like 6 months before you can find somebody.
Nice. And if you look at your growth, you had like this plateau kind of change, and now I mean you're hitting like 30 million in ARR. We are at a time where like VC money is flowing, and you've done everything bootstrapped. Is this something like you want to continue? Do you feel like maybe taking some cash out and selling a part of your company to de-risk, or are you just okay? We're heading 100 million. in ARR in the next like 4 or 5 years, or 2 years or 3 years, and then we do a big exit? Like, what's your vision about that?
Obviously, like pre-COVID, I was going to do a growth equity round, really, right?
Okay.
I was like, typical, like, hey, let's just get a growth equity company in. And at the time, we were like $14 million, $50 million,
Okay.
really, right? And then during COVID, we acquired a company and we grew quite rapidly, really, right? So we went to 20, and then now we're going to 26, 27, really, right? So at this point, until unless we get like I don't want to do a full growth equity round with kind of bringing somebody selling 50% of my company and doing the whole process, really. I mean, even though I could probably make a lot of money, I think, I'm looking for, like a minority investment, like, okay, at a great valuation, simply put, right? If I get a great valuation, but I'm not super active about it because obviously I got to run the company and do this, right? So, okay. So I mean, we've gone back. I've gone in my head, like everything else, I've gone back and forth on it. Like, maybe we should do it. Then I'm like, well, it's a lot of work and it's kind of bullshit work that I got to deal with. And, so what I've decided that I won't do is like, I won't sell 50% of the company and get a growth equity round and do that process. Cause that's fine. I mean, I'll take the risk a little bit more. Like we've taken a risk up to, 27, then we can get to, 50, 60 maybe in the next few, without, I think we can do it by ourselves realistically. But obviously the money helps with M&A, really. So there are companies that we would like to acquire also to fuel growth, right? So that's where I get stuck at that point. Like, shit, man, I don't have the money to go out and buy other companies, especially good ones that really command a multiple, and rightly so, frankly. I think rightly so. So I don't have that kind of cash, obviously, right? So that's where I would probably bring in a partner to say, like, okay, look, finance this acquisition, take over, 5-10% of the company to help finance the acquisition, to help fuel top line revenue growth.
Nice, that's interesting. Well, time flies. I really want to be cautious of your time. So I'm going to just ask 3 flash questions. The first one is, what's your favorite book or podcast?
Book is Principles by Ray Dalio. I think, it's kind of a heavy read, but I think like a couple of concepts that he talks about around radical transparency and things like that are super, in my mind, are super, unique and fresh and interesting and new in the world of business and work. So I think I read that book and that definitely changed the way I thought.
Nice. Who's your favorite Bootstrap founder and why?
I think Jason Fried from Basecamp. Really, I think he kind of to some extent he kind of started the movement to a large extent. I like them because they keep pushing, they keep telling the truth, really, like not bullshitting too much and saying like, hey, this was what we had to do and this is what is good, but and they can accept failures and they can accept the truth. So I like him from that perspective. He's not too much of bullshit going on. It's he lays it out as it is. So I appreciate that at least.
Agree. And last question: what's the thing you like to do the most in order to regain energy in the tough times?
I like to go mountain biking. So that's my thing to do. Like when I get stressed out, I'm like I go mountain biking, and mountain biking has the like cardio multiplied by skill multiplied by adrenaline. It's like a good kind of mix of all these 3 things, really, right? So yeah, so that's my thing. In fact, you might appreciate it. So I was in Chamonix. I think we went mountain biking over there. So it was fun. Like I was there.
Good landscape.
So yeah, it was great. So we went mountain biking there. So it was fun and great views and great landscape. I was in Geneva and we went up there from the Switzerland side. So
nice. And thanks a lot, Vivek, for your time and all these insights. Where can people follow you and or get in touch with you?
LinkedIn. I think that's I'm not on Twitter, so awesome. Just LinkedIn is the easiest way to do it. Just Google my search for my name, Vivek Bhaskaran.
We'll put the name. We'll put the link in the comment. Thanks a lot, Vivek.
All right. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Bootstrap Stories, the only podcast where bootstrap entrepreneurs share their journey in all transparency. If you enjoyed this episode, don't hesitate to leave us a review And in case you want to see the interview, all episodes are live on the Guillaume Moubeche YouTube channel. Check out the link in the description and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Have an amazing day and make sure to also join us in our amazing Bootstrap community where we all help each other to become successful and grow a profitable business. Take care and talk to you soon.